The clinic smelled like bleach and broken promises. Zariah kept one hand pressed hard against Joon-Ho's side, her thermal delivery bag, the one she'd ripped open and folded into a compress, soaked through and ruined. The boy hadn't cried once, not in the alley, not in the car, not now. He just watched her with those quiet, serious eyes, breathing in shallow, measured pulls like someone had trained him to endure. Who trains an 11-year-old to endure? "You're going to be okay," she said, though she had no idea if that was true. He blinked. "You honked." "Yeah." That was stupid. "Yeah," she said again, and something close to a smile crossed his face before the pain swallowed it. The night clinic receptionist barely looked up from her phone when Zariah shouldered through the door. "Gunshot. He needs a doctor now." That got attention. Nurses materialized. Joon-Ho was lifted onto a gurney and Zariah stepped back, letting the white coats swarm him, watching his small fingers curl against the sheet. "Don't ask my name. Don't ask my name. Don't." "Ma'am, we need your information." She was already backing toward the door. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. Zariah stood in the parking lot and pressed her spine against her sedan, staring up at a sky the color of a bruise. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't noticed until now. She looked down at them, at the dark, drying stain along her jacket sleeve, and felt the adrenaline finally crack apart into something raw. You could have driven away. She nearly had. Her foot had hovered over the gas pedal for what felt like a full year before her hand found the horn. She pulled off her ruined jacket and stuffed it into the back seat, checked her phone. 3 missed calls from the restaurant, 12 more orders queued. The city didn't stop for near-death experiences. Zariah clocked herself back in, pointed the sedan toward the next address, and told herself it was over. She was wrong. She noticed him the second time. The first time, outside the laundromat on Creston Avenue at 6 a.m., she'd clocked him as a finance guy who'd taken a wrong turn. Dark suit, no wrinkle, posture like a blade standing upright. Out of place, but the city was full of misplaced people. The second time, he was standing across from her apartment building, holding no coffee, reading no phone, watching the entrance with the patient stillness of something carved from stone. Zariah stopped on the sidewalk, grocery bag heavy in her arms, heart suddenly loud. "He's waiting for me." She almost turned around, thought about Keisha's couch across town, thought about how fast she could drive to the freeway, but her feet stayed planted because running was a confession and she hadn't done anything wrong. "You witnessed a hit on a child," her brain whispered. "In this city, that's the same thing." She took the long way around the block, ducked through the back entrance, climbed 5 flights of stairs rather than the elevator, and deadbolted her door with hands that barely cooperated. She stood in her dark kitchen, back against the refrigerator, listening to the building creak. Silence. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. It rang again. Again. On the 5th call, something in her gut told her that not answering was its own kind of answer. She picked up. The voice on the other end was low and deliberate, shaped around each word like a man who never wasted one. "Miss Cole, I've been asked to extend an invitation on behalf of my employer." A beat. "He's grateful for what you did for his son." Zariah's breath went thin. His son. "I didn't do anything," she said, her voice impressively steady for someone whose knees had stopped working. "Wrong number." "Your sedan, ma'am, has a dent above the left rear wheel well, pine tree air freshener, University of Phoenix bumper sticker, though you never attended." Another pause. "Shall I continue?" The deadbolt on her door felt very small suddenly. "Where?" she asked. Victor Hahn drove like a man who had never once been late and never once been in a hurry. Zariah sat in the back of a car so quiet she could hear herself think, which was unfortunate because her thoughts were not good company. She'd worn her least destroyed hoodie and her cleanest pair of Nikes, as if that might help anything, as if she could dress for an audience with the kind of man who sent silent watchers to memorize the dents in her car. The city slid past the tinted windows, shifting from her neighborhood's bodegas and buzzing streetlights into a district she rarely entered, all glass towers and doormen and streets that somehow were always clean. The building didn't have a sign. It didn't need one. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse and Zariah stepped out and stopped. She couldn't help it. The space was immaculate, cream marble floors reflecting the city lights below, panoramic windows turning Chicago into something that looked curated, controlled, beautiful. Orchids in architectural vases, a grand piano no one had probably ever played carelessly, the smell of sandalwood, and something expensive she didn't have a word for. And there, in the middle of it all, her ruined Nikes. She looked down at the dark scuff her left shoe had left on the marble and felt the full, clarifying weight of where she was. Victor appeared beside her without making a sound. She was starting to understand that was simply how he moved through the world. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, the kind of face that gave nothing away voluntarily. "You'll see him now," Victor said. "I haven't agreed to see him." Something passed across Victor's expression, not quite amusement, more like recognition. "No," he said, "you haven't." He didn't move, didn't gesture, just waited. Zariah exhaled through her nose and walked forward because she understood, the way you understood certain things about certain cities at certain hours of the night, that she had never actually had a choice. The double doors at the end of the hall swung open before she reached them. Chairman Kang didn't look like a monster. That was the first thing that unsettled her. He stood at the window with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the city below with the calm ownership of a man who considered it all his, whether the deed said so or not. He was perhaps 60, silver-haired, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than Zariah made in a year. When he turned, his eyes were sharp, precise, and worse than anger, worse than contempt, interested. "Miss Cole, please sit." Zariah didn't sit. "How's the kid?" A pause. In another man, the pause might mean irritation. In Kang, she couldn't tell. "Joon-Ho will recover fully. The surgeons say the wound was shallow. The compress, your brief, prevented significant blood loss." "Good. Then we're done. I'd like to offer you a position." He moved toward a seating area and sat himself, unhurried, crossing one leg over the other. "Joon-Ho is resistant to comfort from people he does not choose. He has not spoken to his physician, his tutors, his security detail. A beat. He has asked for the woman who honked." Something pulled tight in Zariah's chest. "He asked for me?" 3 times. Kang's voice carried no manipulation. It didn't need to. "I am asking you to serve as his companion. You would be compensated generously. Housed, protected." Protected. The word sat wrong in her mouth. Protected by who? From who? Kang studied her the way a craftsman studies a material he's considering using. "The man who shot my son is named Daniel Park. He's reckless, frightened, and currently searching for the only witness to his failure." He tilted his head slightly. "That would be you, Miss Cole." The room felt smaller suddenly. "If I say no," she asked, "you are free to leave." He said it like a fact, not a threat. Somehow that was worse. "But Daniel Park will find you, Miss Cole. The question is whether you'd prefer to be found by him or protected by me." Zariah stared at the man across the marble table and understood. This was not an offer. It was a horizon, and she was already standing at its edge. Daniel Park was not a careful man. He knew this about himself the way people know things they've been told too many times to keep arguing with. He was fast, he was useful in a fight, but careful got you dead in a different kind of way, the slow, bureaucratic kind, buried under patience while your bosses measured your every move and decided your value. He preferred the quick kind of dead. At least it was honest. He sat in a stolen Civic 2 blocks from the restaurant, laptop open, a traffic camera feed looping in the corner of the screen. The delivery car, sedan, decade-old, pine tree air freshener visible through the windshield, had been easy to track. License plate to dispatch records to driver assignment to name. Zariah Cole, 21, 1147 Creston Avenue, apartment 5C. He'd already driven past her building twice, already clocked the cameras, the angles, the timing of the night security guard's cigarette breaks. He was good at this part, at least. What he was less good at was explaining to Chairman Kang why a botched hit on an 11-year-old had been allowed to happen, which meant this had to be resolved before that conversation became necessary, before the wrong people started comparing notes, before the witness had a chance to become testimony. His phone buzzed. His boss. He let it ring. He needed 2 more days, maybe less. He zoomed in on the employee schedule he'd pulled from the restaurant's publicly posted social media. Zariah Cole, closing shift, Friday, tonight. Daniel closed the laptop and rolled his shoulders. The city was full of invisible people, delivery drivers and dishwashers and night shift ghosts who no one looked twice at. He'd counted on that. The girl had been close enough to see his face, and she'd made herself known anyway. Honked that ridiculous horn, blinded him, bought the kid time. Who does that? It didn't matter. He wasn't angry, really. He was practical. She'd made herself visible. Now he simply had to find her before Chairman Kang found her. He turned the key in the ignition and pulled away from the curb, already mapping the